The iron lung is a colloquial name given to a type of ventilator that saw mass use during the polio outbreak of the 50s. In more recent years, the device has essentially been retired in favor of more reasonably sized ventilators. But there are still a couple of people who continue to use their iron lungs, and both of them were afflicted with polio as children during the 50s. Join FactsVerse as we take a look at two people still using an iron lung to survive. The first person we'll take a look at in this video is named Paul Alexander. He's become known as Polio Paul. He's been living in an iron lung for over 70 years and is one of only two people remaining in the United States still using one. Paul has been confined to his iron lung since he was 6. The iron lung was invented in the 20s, though it didn't see mass use until the 30s. By the time of the polio outbreak in the 50s, the device was commonly in use. Of course, the large size of the device may seem excessive in comparison to more modern medical equipment, but those whose lives were saved by the device certainly warmed up to it. Although iron lungs took a little bit to catch on, the polio outbreak of the 50s resulted in them lining the walls of nearly every hospital in the country. By 1959, it was said there were well over 1,000 people in America alone that were using an iron lung in some capacity to stay alive. Over the years, that number has gradually decreased, as patients have either passed away or moved on to different and more convenient means of ventilation. But there always remained a handful of people who continued to prefer the use of the iron lung for whatever reasons. And as of now, this small group has been whittled down to only 2 members. The United States was declared free from polio in 1979, and there were said to be only around 10 people in the country using an iron lung as of 2014. As of today, that number has decreased to 2. One of those is Polio Paul. Although Polio Paul has been essentially confined to his iron lung for the majority of his life, he has been able to accomplish great things. For this reason, he's grateful for his iron lung and all that it's done for him. Paul became stricken with polio at age 6. After only 5 days of showing symptoms, the child was unable to perform most of his basic motor functions. This included speaking and swallowing. Although his parents initially had been advised against taking the child to the hospital, they were eventually given no choice. Thankfully, the iron lung Paul was put into saved his life. Sadly, he's been essentially confined to it ever since. When Paul first awoke inside of his iron lung after having lost consciousness, he thought he was dead due to the confinement and the fact he had lost so much of his ability to move. Paul's case of polio was extreme, and he had become almost entirely paralyzed. Many feared Paul would be doomed to a fate of sitting and watching TV for the rest of his life. However, Paul soon got bored of sedentary living and decided to dedicate his life to his studies. Despite the immense confinement of his iron lung, Paul was able to graduate from high school with honors. Following this, it was the young man's dream to become a lawyer, but he ended up being denied college admission initially because of his disability. Although Paul had at first been denied entry into college, he was persistent with his pursuits and later managed to be admitted into the Southern Methodist University on a scholarship. From there, he ended up at University of Texas at Austin Law School, where he graduated with a JD in 1984. Although Paul had initially believed he would never be able to leave his iron lung, he learned a technique later in life called frog breathing that made it so he could leave the device for minutes at a time. Though this might not seem like much to the average person, a few minutes would certainly prove a breath of fresh air to a person who'd spent decades in confinement. Paul is no longer capable of frog breathing, but he's still alive in his iron lung. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to FactsVerse if you haven't already. And keep watching for the other iron lung user. Besides the fact that Paul Alexander earned a law degree in his iron lung and went on to practice law for several decades, he's also written an incredibly inspiring autobiography. It's made even more impressive by the fact that he wrote the entire thing using a pen sticking out of his mouth. The autobiography is called 3 Minutes for a Dog: My Life in an Iron Lung, and it took Paul 5 years to complete. Besides Paul Alexander, the other person still living with the help of an iron lung is Martha Lillard. Martha was 5 years old when she was afflicted with polio, having first started experiencing symptoms soon after her 5th birthday party. Her parents took her to the hospital, where she was diagnosed with the disease. She stayed in the hospital for 6 months, and she was in an iron lung for the entire stay. Though Martha still uses her iron lung, she doesn't have to use it as much as Paul. She only has to sleep in it to stay alive. Like Paul, Martha's iron lung has been a part of her life for around 7 decades. She chooses not to move into another form of ventilation because she has a personal affinity for the iron lung. According to her, it's simply the best and most comfortable method of ventilation. Her opinion has to count for something, as the device has kept her alive for many, many years. Even so, Martha has shared she has a hard time maintaining her iron lung due to the fact that it's hard to find replacement parts for its antiquated machinery. Iron lungs haven't been manufactured for some time, and Martha is running out of backstock spare parts. Her original iron lung broke down in the 90s, and she had an incredibly hard time finding a new one. At that point, the iron lung was already antiquated, and the medical industry had moved on to other forms of ventilation. Martha called around to find somebody willing to part with an iron lung. Either nobody had one, or they weren't willing to let it go. Finally, Martha ended up finding someone in Utah willing to sell her one, and that's the iron lung she's currently using today. While Martha doesn't currently have to worry about tracking down a new iron lung, there is still the issue of routine maintenance she has to concern herself with. It has many parts that need replacing periodically, and Martha is running out of extras. These parts are no longer manufactured, which means Martha is forced to try to track down backstock inventories containing quantities of old parts that just happen to be lying around. Although she's been lucky enough to find parts for her iron lung until now, she knows the reserves of backstock iron lung parts are sure to dry up sometime. She says it's harder now than it's ever been to track down spare parts. Martha is incredibly grateful towards her iron lung and considers the device one of her greatest and oldest friends. Though it has brought her a little bit of difficulty in the past, the trouble has been worth it in her eyes due to the fact that the device has kept her alive. Martha was once trapped in her iron lung after a power outage. The incident occurred during an ice storm, and Martha found herself trapped in the device without any heat. Though she had set a rig up so she could call emergency services in case of such an event, the phone lines were down as well. According to Martha, she told herself while trapped in the iron lung she wasn't going to die. She finally managed to get a hold of emergency services, though they had little understanding of what she meant when she told them she was trapped in something called an iron lung. Emergency services helped Martha start her generator, and she was able to get out. Unlike Paul, Martha had a hard time pursuing an education after becoming stricken with polio. She instead has lived a fairly quiet life. She likes to watch old Hollywood movies, play with her dogs, and spend time with her sister and brother-in-law. Martha never married or had children due to her illness, so those two are her closest family. Until Paul and Martha pass away, the iron lung will continue to live on. Now it's time to hear from you. Could you imagine spending your life in an iron lung? And do you think you'd be able to get a law degree? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to FactsVerse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.